So oftentimes we find ourselves having discussions, whether it's in this sector here, or other sectors, or even in other spaces on social media, discussing colorism. It comes from various spaces, whether you're light skinned, dark skinned, whether you're Hispanic. It doesn't matter. If you're brown of any way, you often have conversations in regards to colorism, or you hear about it. And so tonight I'm going to be opening up that discussion with my members. I'm going to have a fire panel up tonight in regards to this discussion. Some people who have had discussions about this previously, also people who are educated on this matter. And I really think that it's high time to have this conversation. The reason I'm bringing it backstage to members is so that we can discuss this and talk about this openly on the panel. And then at some point, I do plan on making the video public so that everyone will be able to see and at least hear about what we're talking about. But I'm going to prelude it, the conversation tonight with a public discussion because I wanted to read something from a book called Same Family, Different Colors. And it's a really great book. It has some really great points in it. And I just wanted to bring up those points as a prelude to the video tonight. So we're going to go ahead and get into that in just a moment. I'm going to play a quick timer for you guys so you guys can get comfortable, and I'll be right with you guys. So grand rising, everyone. I hope everybody is doing as great as I am. Shout out to you guys for being in the building. What's up, Breaking the Culture? I appreciate you as well as everybody who is in the clouds. This is not going to be a very long video. It's just something that I wanted to do as a prelude to tonight's members only. The video tonight will be in regards to colorism and the Blue Vein Society. And a lot of people have never heard of this society. Never heard of such a organization. Many of us, particularly those of us in our 40s, maybe 50s or so, we have lots of members of our family who know about the paper bag test, okay, or the brown color paint test, okay, where if you were a certain hue, you were not permitted into certain societies, permitted into certain organizations, certain schools, certain churches, if you had a certain hue color. Okay. So that is something that we are going to discuss tonight. We're going to discuss it very openly. I have a fire panel already set up for tonight for the members only. And we're going to get deep into this conversation. But I wanted to do a bit of a prelude to that conversation beforehand, just to do publicly. And then, like I said, eventually I will make the video public as well. But this will be something that I wanted to discuss with the members and, of course, have the discussion with the panel and then eventually let that out to the public. But let's get into a book called Same Family, Different Colors, Confronting Colorism by Lori L. Tharps, okay? The book was published around 2017 or so, and it's a really great book that actually goes into what was deemed the Blue Vein Society, which is an organization that was started somewhere in the 1870s or so, somewhere near after slavery. Now, during slavery, this actually was occurring, but after slavery is when lighter skinned or lighter hued Black Americans wanted to separate themselves from darker hued Black Americans. Even though white Americans didn't care whether you were light skinned or not, they still considered you a Black person. There was still a separate class of light skinned people who felt that they were superior and that darker hued people were inferior to them. A lot of this, I believe, definitely plays into things that we see today and a lot of the colorism issues that we have today, such as, for instance, let's just bring up an example where you got, there used to be where rap videos, you would see a lot of lighter hued women. You would see women with curlier hair, straighter hair, that would be in these videos. Even though they were Black women, they were still, it was a certain hue color that was considered pretty or beautiful, whereas you barely saw dark-skinned women. And if you did, they would say things such as, oh, she's pretty for a dark-skinned girl, or she's beautiful for a dark-skinned girl, as opposed to she's just beautiful. So a lot of conversations like that we've had with one another, and we've heard from one another. And even from a family like my own, where we have various hue colors in our family. I'm going to show some photos tonight in my members only of some family members. I plan on doing that anyway. I've got to upload some of the older family members and how the hue colors have changed over the years, how the hue colors are still the same in some various aspects of the family. And, there's different things that have changed just based off of who we are and our bloodline. So we often don't have conversations in our family about color, but I hear about these conversations, and I hear about these conversations from various places. And so I thought it would be a really good time to talk about this. So I'm going to read this one part of the book. And again, this is called the Blue Vein. This is about the Blue Vein Society. And it's the book is regarding, it's called Same Family, Different Colors by Lori L. Tharps, okay? It says, house slaves versus field slaves. Even though light-skinned Blacks held a privileged place, and this is on page 23, so this starts on page 23 of the book. And it says, even though light-skinned blacks held a privileged place in many parts of antebellum America, far more light-skinned blacks were slaves than were free. According to the authors of The Color Complex, the approximately 10% of the more than 400,000 slaves in the South before 1860 had some degree of quote unquote white blood, unquote. So besides separating blacks into two camps, free and enslaved, the light-skinned versus dark-skinned dichotomy also manifested within the structure of slavery. For various reasons, light-skinned slaves enjoyed an elevated status within the cruel system. Once slavery had become an entrenched institution in the United States, certain rules and practices became common, including preferential treatment for light-skinned slaves. Light-skinned slaves were generally preferred for indoor assignments such as cooking, driving, seamstress, and other more specialized positions that were preferable to the backbreaking labor in the plantation fields. One could argue that some of the jobs in the big house were equally labor-intensive and demeaning, but the fact is that slaves who worked in the master's house had certain life-changing advantages. It was far more likely that the house slave would learn to read, be introduced to upper-class white traditions, be permitted to play or interact with white family members than would a field slave. In fact, slave-owning families found that they could run their homes more efficiently when their house slaves were more knowledgeable and educated, noted historian Adele Logan Alexander. The reasons why light-skinned slaves were preferred over their darker-skinned brethren are numerous. Oftentimes, these light-skinned slaves were the master's progeny, and he simply wanted to keep them close. Light-skinned slaves were also favored because the vast majority of white Americans believed that racial superiority was biological. In other words, white people believed that the more white blood a black person had in him, the greater his intellectual capacity and the likelihood that he would be, quote unquote, civilized. Eventually, the reasons didn't matter. The belief that light-skinned slaves were more intelligent, more skilled, and easier to train in ways of respectable society simply became a self-perpetuating myth. As such, light-skinned slaves were more valuable commodities when bought and sold at auction, which eventually led the slaves themselves to buy into a color-based hierarchy. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to go over a little bit more of that tonight in the members only. But I particularly wanted to just paint the picture of that because we oftentimes blame one another, and we put we put blame about this on one another and kind of jump down each other's throats in regards to this. Well, you light-skinned people think this, or well, you dark-skinned people think that. And we just kind of go back and forth with one another. And we don't get deep enough into the history of this colorism problem. We don't get hit deep enough into how this came about, okay, and why this actually started. The only thing we're at now, especially now in today's society, is who's to blame? Like, are the light-skinned people to blame? Are the dark-skinned people to blame? Who do we blame? When in actuality, we're all facing the same damn problem, you know? If we go deep enough and we dig deep enough into our history and we go further back, go a little bit further down into slavery and even beyond, particularly during slavery, there was a particular thing which this book was discussing where lighter skinned people felt that they were more valuable because of how they were treated by their masters, what they were privileged with by their masters, what they were allowed to engage in, what they were allowed to do, how they were allowed to go about it. And naturally, this would give them a feeling that they are better than the next. This would give them a notion that they have a higher hierarchy than the other. even though it's ridiculous, even though it's terrible. But the only way that you can really break down the complexity of a problem and really, really get to the root of the issue is by getting deep into the actual issue, you know, going deep into the actual problem. Over time, this has developed over generations. This has come down and been passed down and down and down and down over generations of time. The idea of having a drop of Black blood, the idea of if you have a drop of Black blood, you will need to pass for the other race so that you can make it, so that you're not enslaved, so that you're not treated badly, so that you're not downtrodden, so that you have higher privileges. This has been something that has been discussed in households for multiple generations. And this is why we are facing what we're facing today, where we've got race wars amongst Black people, where we've got Black people feeling inferior to one another, where we've got dark-hued Black people feeling that, and I'm not just speaking on Black men or Black women right now. I'm speaking on us as a whole, where we've got, where we're talking about our hue color as if it's a sin or as if it's some kind of curse. Where if you say, oh, I would never date a dark-skinned Black woman, or I would never date a dark-skinned Black man, just because of what has been taught to us about darker skin. Not because we really think there's something really wrong if we break it all down, but literally what we have been taught and what has been embedded in our DNA from our ancestors. And I just want us to think about this and even have this discussion with one another, have a conversation with your friends, have a conversation with your family. For those of you who have older ancestors, family members that you can talk to about this, have this conversation and see what they say. See what they can tell you or what they have told you in the past, what they felt about their darker skin or what they felt about their lighter skin, and how what they thought shapes what you think, or what they felt shapes how your family has turned out. You know, it's amazing in my family how both sides of the family have natives, and then one of the sides has whites, and then another side has Blacks. I can't confirm whether they were slaves, but I can say that I think they were, just based off of their surname. Now, that's my mother's side of the family. That's my mother's family. My mother's father's family, they are 100% Seminoles, and I know they're natives, and I have evidence and proof of it. And then on my father's side of the family, there's white people on one side, and then the other side, there's two different types of natives. There's, I forgot what they are now. Either way, there's two different natives on my father's side. I know one is Cherokee, but I don't think they're really Cherokees. They were saying they were, but I don't think they are. Well, one was saying that they were, but I don't think they are. But I know that my great-grandfather was a dark-hued Black man, but he had very long, straight Black hair down past his behind, okay? And he was a native. And then there's another one that was my great-grandmother. She was, well, her mother was a native as well, and she's a very light-hued woman. So, I have various different hues of people within the family that come from different sides. So that's not really a conversation that we've particularly had in regards to that, because it's kind of difficult to talk about light and dark when you've got different cues in the family, you know, and that still exists to this day. I've got cousins up in PA that are look white. You know what I mean? I've got cousins up in PA that live down the street that are darker than me, you know? And then I've got family here, you know, down south. I've got family well down south that are very light skinned. You can't tell the difference. And then I've got others that are very dark skinned. You know, and so it's not really, it's kind of difficult to have a conversation about colorism in a family like that, you know, but the conversation does happen. It does come up. And like I said, I've often heard the conversation more or less outside of the family. But I definitely wanted to talk about this and bring this up and at least get your minds reeling and thinking. And then, like I said, we are going to have a fire panel in regards to this tonight. And then I will bring this conversation public sometime, probably in the next week or so. All right. But yeah, just think about that for today, guys. And I may go live a little bit later on with some sector topics as well as some other topics that's going on in the world. There's a lot going on. But I will talk to you guys later. I truly appreciate you guys for tuning in and just hearing me for just a moment. And just that little excerpt in regards to colorism and kind of how we got on this road and what we can possibly do about it, you know. But definitely what I think doing about it is going to take is 100% definitely making sure that we are opening these kinds of discussions up from the, you know, from the past, talking to people in the past if we're able to, and also talking to the future generations about this stuff so that, you know, the past does not repeat itself. All right, guys, I will talk to you guys later. I truly appreciate you guys for tuning in. Peace, guys.